Welcome. This is Atcoin Day Trading, the best Elliott wave analysis, episode number 8. I'm going to talk about Cardano because Cardano is the most impulsive looking altcoin that I follow closely. And Cardano already established its impulse wave and other cryptos are still struggling to establish theirs. So I want to take a look at Cardano with you today to give you some hopium. I will start with Ichimoku and then the Elliott wave count. I'll just look at the last Elliott wave count. If you're interested in its history, you have to look at my last intervention on Cardano because it hasn't changed. So I'm only taking a look at the last impulsive move. And before I do that, I want to take a quick look at it won't be that quick, but I still want to do it. I want to take a look at my Telegram free group. I invite you to become a member of it. And I have posted something that I want to read to you. The growingly political protest in Kazakhstan. Let me just see if I'm sharing. I should be sharing right now. The growingly political protests in Kazakhstan are gathering some thoughts, adding to the fearful spirits with Russia promising to send their armed forces into aid. So I've heard some rumors on what happened, but I cannot confirm it since I'm not there. But I heard rumors of people needing help, needing passports in order to withdraw some money. I cannot confirm that, but that's the kind of stuff I've heard. You know what kind of passports I'm talking about. The ESG insanity, environmental, social, and governance teams are the pursuit of profit for shareholders, where the pursuit of profit for shareholders is no longer the essential goal, could be seen to be indicative of a decade-long positive social feeling, which have steered stock markets levels to the most fabulous heights in history, according to many measures. So when stuff gets that high, and when moods get that good that they stop thinking rationally and profits no longer matter, it's an indication of an extremely bullish environment where people think they can do whatever they want and money is no longer a primary goal. You can think about equality or whatever you want, or climate change, whatever you want, environment, social, and governments, whatever that is. And they make it up every day according to the central planners' liking. So when that happens, it's an extreme recording. It shows that the trend was so good that now they think they can do whatever they want and nobody and money, for example, does not matter anymore. And this announced that the top in the stock market could be close. A debt jubilee is a festivity when unfair debts are revoked. The word jubilee comes from the Old Testament of the Christian Bible and refers to a cyclical rejoicing in ancient time when liabilities were terminated, slaves liberated, lands restored to its initial owners, and fields left unseeded. The analytical fist of the debt emanated from bad years' yield, which compelled people into borrowing and enslavement. So there were years where they didn't produce much to sell, and then they went into borrowing money, and then they could not pay it back and were enslaved. That they really were enslaved, or in a symbolic manner were enslaved because of the debt, but mostly they really became slaves because they were too poor, and because of that became slaves. The gigantic level of more worldwide debt exploded even further by the COVID pandemic. So that was out of control even before the COVID pandemic, but it reached new levels, new unthinkable levels in an extreme short time period. I hope that I can say that without getting banned. So the debt is progressively being seen as a dilemma that can only be corrected in two ways. Either it is inflated out when endemic consumer price inflation diminishes the actual amount of debt, or it is merely abundant in an old established debt jubilee. So nowadays we don't do them so that often anymore, but in the past it was quite frequent. By falsification of currency through the digital printing press, central banks across the world are attempting their best to provoke price inflation. So they want it because they have that much, the governments have that much debt to pay back that they want huge price inflation. They don't mind if you lose all your money and all your savings, as long as they can play along a little longer. Additionally, the helicopter money that is printing permits the stimulus checks directed to the US managers for illustration could be looked at as a kind of debt jubilee. The authorities give managers some recently stamped Fed tokens, which permits them to pay down their credit card debt, for example. So that's a kind of forgiveness. They know that you cannot pay it back, but here we give you some freshly printed Fed tokens. And with that, if you like to do so, you will be able to pay back some of your debts. And other jubilees will be presumably occurring. And one example is the following. In the USA, Navient, one of the largest student loan services, will abandon 1.7 billion USD in private loans. Basically, Navient was incriminated of lending to people who couldn't afford to pay off, and instead of going through the courts, the debt is simply abandoned. The stock price advanced slightly on the day of the proclamation. So to me, this is a little funny. I'm not wanting to be cynical, but I never trust that kind of thing. It's not justice for me. It's just something they make up whenever they want to make it up, and they change the rules according whenever it pleases them. And for me, that's a very unjust thing to do. Not because I don't want people to pay. I want people to pay back their student loans. That's not the question. It's just I don't like a system where when you look at it, you think it's a huge scam. So, and what is funny that I don't think it's just because some had to pay it back and others do not pay it back. And also, I don't think that all the people are concerned. I think that they pick and choose some people who don't have to pay it back and others do have to pay it back. And what I find funny is if they cannot pay it back, why did they give them the loans in the first place? So if they admit that they can't pay it back, it's because whatever they studied would never allow them to pay it back. So in that case, why did they study it? So there are a lot of questions that come up, and it's also funny that the investor think that is not too bad, and the stock price keeps rising. It is good for people who don't have to pay back the debt, but it's not so good for the guys who hold the debt and wanted it to be paid back. So why the stock price market rises is unexplainable. That's why you cannot trade with news. You have to do something else. And for me, it's Elliott wave and Ichimoku for use can be something else, but you need something else than the news because the news won't work. Now, if you knew that in advance, you would have bet that the stock goes down, crashes really hard, and it did not. So you cannot trade the news. Maybe it did afterwards, but I don't think so. You can check it if you have time and if you're interested. And also look into the details to see if it makes any sense. It's a bit like the fatalistic old proverb. Owe the bank 1,000 quid and it's your problem. Owe the bank 1,000,000 quid and it's their problem. So nowadays you should probably say a trillion, because money is not anymore the same as it is as it was in the past. They inflated it away that much that 1 million cannot be compared today with the 80s or even before that. There comes a moment when the height of debt gets so enormous that it virtually becomes inapplicable, impossible to recover. Then it should not exist anymore, because people will start to ignore it. They can't do anything about it, and certainly not pay it off. That's the case for states and also for people who are in enormous debt. If it remains being served, the debt, economists cannot see interest rates climbing too far, because it promptly emerges as exorbitant to serve. So even the states won't be able to pay it back normally. I mean, the states, of course, if you have a central bank and it can print the dollars it needs to pay back, then okay, but you need also to have the world reserve to do that. But unless you're in that situation, you have to convert your freshly printed money into Fed tokens, and then you have to pay back the debt, and most countries cannot do that. And consequently, the growing demands for debt jubilee, because economists think that. So let me go back to the last thing, because there's something I want to explain to you. If it remains being served, economists cannot see interest rates climbing too far, because it promptly emerges as exorbitant to be served. So if you think about inflation, what they do normally is they rise the interest rates. And that, what I've just told you, says that the interest rates won't rise too far, because if they do, then nobody can pay back its debt. And we don't mind if developing countries can pay back the debt, but if countries like Germany, France, Spain, and so on cannot pay back the debt, then that's a huge problem. We don't mind about stuff we call pejoratively banana republics. I have no idea if it's the case, but it's not to say, but we don't care about some people, but we do care about other people. If Germany defaults on its debts, it's a different topic than if Greece does. And finally, I have asked a question, and I invite you to answer it if you find the subject interesting. I do find it interesting. Will we get a debt jubilee, or will we get more austerity measures in the attempt to pay back a debt that can't be paid back? Or will we simply inflate, hyperinflation it away? So there are three things that could happen: and a debt jubilee, austerity measures, or hyperinflation. The question is not that good, because it's probably a mix of them three. They will do some debt jubilees, like, for example, the student's loan, who don't have to pay back. They will, or mortgages, who you don't have to pay back, whatever comes to the mind. And I think it's very unjust, because if you don't have a debt, they don't give it to everybody. They only give it to some peoples. And it's political linked. So they give it to some peoples because they want their votes, and that's why some people we get, and other peoples who they don't care about them because they don't represent a majority with their voting power, they won't get anything. So it's to me it's very unjust that some people get favors and others don't. But that's what will happen. I mean, I'm happy for the people who don't have to pay back the students. It's a scam anyway, so I'm happy for them. But you see, if you keep on doing that, it's very unjust, because there are always some winners and a lot of losers. So debt jubilees is one example. Austerity measures, like in Greece, is another example, or hyperinflation. You just hyperinflate it away. Once the money is worth nothing anymore, you can start all over again. So I think it might be a mix of them where you are. So my question is, what is the most imminent thing that will happen in your place? Do you think it's hyperinflation? Do you think in your place the most imminent thing is austerity measures, or the most imminent thing is debt jubilees? In my place, actually, I don't want to tell you, because if I tell you, then you will just copy by my answer to your answers. But in my place, there's something they will start doing. And once that's done, maybe you get a second thing, and then the third thing. But there's one thing that will happen before the rest, where I am. And where you are, there's certainly one thing of them, that jubilee, austerity measures or hyperinflation, that will also happen before the rest. So just answer that if you want to answer that question. It would be interesting. I don't know how long it is available until the results show up, but take a look at it and answer it in accordance to what you think, how the huge amount of that will be paid back. Now, that being said, I've promised you to take a look at Cardano. So we'll do that now. First, as always, I quickly want to remind you that there are risks involved in trading, and I'll show you my disclaimer as well as my risk warning. The link is in the description. And I go fast to my services, which are live 8-wave updates on BTC. For 20 USD a month, you will get 1 to 3 updates a day. It might be more. It depends on how much I can work, how much time I spend indoors in front of the computer, but it might be 8 updates a day. So it's a lot. I really follow closely the wave development on BTC and tell you what I think about it. Since BTC is the key to understanding the crypto market, and if you are an investor or a trader, you should be aware of it. And also there's a nice help group, and with time people learn better how to use it, and I think it will get more interesting with time, what other traders come up with and about what to talk. So something you can use next to it. If you're not interested in help desk, you just can follow my calls on my Elliott analysis on BTC. I also talk about Ichimoku for entry prices and exit price and stop loss from time to time, but less, because everybody can simply put it on the chart and look at it if they need. So there's no need to look all the time at it. 8-wave, you follow it more closely. Now, that being said, we take a look at Cardano. So let me open the right chart. Well, just one more thing, very fast. Please like and comment. And the thing I want to talk about once again is sentiment. Sentiment was very low recently. And once it's that low, normally huge price increase follow, like 300%, 1,460 and 134%. So I just want to point that out again. We are again at a moment where the sentiment is very bad. And it's the same thing happened to me right now, is happening to me right now as did happen to me when I took look at BTC at the top. At the top, I was criticized for being bearish, and now I'm criticized for being bullish. So it shows that people turned very bearish right now, and they don't want to hear people talking about any bullish outlook on the market. Google Trends gives you the same kind of analysis since we dropped also. And now we finally take a look at Cardano. So on Cardano, we are, the Ichimoku chart tells us that we are bullish since we are above the cloud, and the Tenkan-sen is bigger than the Kijun, which is bullish. The super trend is trendless right now because we are in between both of those lines, but it still looks very bullish. Now, the thing you might ask, if I didn't go long when I should have gone long, so your entry would have been here and your stop loss would have been below the chart. 8 points, you see it in advance, so you know that level. And you should still be in that trade. And you should move your stop loss up with every flat line on the bottom of the cloud. You should move your stop up. So your stop could now be here, and then will be moved up to here. You can also use if you want a more tight stop loss, you can use the Kijun, that line, and wait for it to break and then exit your position. It would be probably quite close to, or you could wait for the super trend, but it's quite close. They are quite close together to turn bearish. If a candle close when the super trend is bearish, right now it's trendless, but when the candle is bearish, you can also exit the position. But let's say you want to go long and you didn't go enter here. So the question is, when can you enter? There are two places where you normally enter. The first one is when you retrace to the Kijun, that line. I have that just to make it look differently, but it's the same thing. When you return to the Kijun, which is happening right now, then you go long. That's one way of going long. And the other way is of waiting for price to touch the cloud, the upper line of the cloud, the SSA, and that is often referred as the SSB. So you wait for it to touch that line and then go long. You wait for a pullback and then go long. Here you have a pullback, so you could go long. That's what you would do on Ichimoku. And as you can see, the lagging span is free to move higher. But we are right now having a correction. And of course, if resistance breaks and we go below the cloud, then your outlook would be bearish and you would be stopped out with, now you should, once you break below the cloud, you should be stopped off with break even or a profit on that trade. I think it will be a profit because I'm expecting it to go even higher. But let's take a look at the Elliott wave count. So the Elliott wave count that I wanted to show you is from the bottom here. It was wave 2. Do that again. So from the bottom here, it was wave 2. We started an impulse higher, wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And right now, our target would be where wave 5 equals wave 1. That would be at 1.719. So that would be our target right now. It's when this wave 1 equals this wave 5. And the second thing to see is that I put a channel on it from wave 2 to wave 4. And I went through the top of wave 3. And that gives you a top here somewhere on that line for price. Normally wave 5 touches that and then retraces, but it does not happen always. It's just indicative. Right now, as you can see, the line is providing support. So either we already started a wave 1 and have here a wave 2, and then we'll go higher, 3, 4, 5, or we are still in the correction, and that's only wave A, B, and C would go lower. I can say for sure right now I'm leaning to the optimistic outlook by declaring this being the bottom of wave 4. What can I tell you more? Here the extended wave was wave 3, and here the extended wave was also wave 3. And the correction was quite simple, being a WXY. Okay, that's all I wanted to tell you today. I hope you did find it interesting. I did. And I see you maybe tomorrow for one more altcoin intervention, or the day afterwards, whenever I find time and want to take a look on YouTube at one more altcoin. Don't forget to join my free Telegram group, just to have a second way of communicating with me. And if you find the subject of TED Jubilee interesting, then let me know what you think. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye. See you soon.